This is The Storied Outdoors, a podcast somewhere between Lewis and Tolkien and Lewis and Clark, finding clarity in the stories we tell and the adventures that shape us. Welcome to The Storied Outdoors. My name is Brad Hill, and I'm joined as always by my good friend and co-host Brian Gill. We are honored today and super excited, long time coming, to have our friend Stephen Rockarts on the show today. Stephen is the owner and lead guide with Fly Fishing Alabama Guide Service. With his unceasing passion for fly fishing, he primarily targets several native species of fish, as like the Alabama bass and the storied red-eye bass, which we've talked about a good bit on the show. Pound for pound, these fish are some of the strongest fighting fish you will encounter. They live in beautiful, untouched waters here in Alabama, some of the best that Alabama has to offer. His trips lead people on an adventure to encounter these tremendous native species. Not only is he a gifted guide, but he's also passionate about hospitality, offering an incredible creekside burger that turns the best days of fishing and some of the worst days to fishing into a good time. And funny how a burger will do that, right? Now, although I personally haven't had the pleasure of having one of these creekside burgers, every time one comes across my screen on Instagram, I salivate and go, man, that looks so good. So one day we'll have to remedy that, my friend. But thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate the compliments about the burger too. It's something that I've grown to love, and it's become a staple on the creek. So I've enjoyed it quite a bit.
You know, Stephen, you and I went fishing before you were a guide, and you gave me one of these burgers. And I think that I was checking out your website a little bit earlier today, and I think a picture of me is on the website, as I'm watching these burgers. But let me just tell you, that burger has grown and evolved since then. I mean, there is so much more going on that burger now. I mean, it's so big. I think I would have to have the ability to unhinge my jaw and be able to eat that thing now. So we're not going to talk just about burgers today, but man,
we are going to talk about it though. We're going to talk about it later.
Thing going.
Yeah. Well, it is definitely matured.
Yeah. Hey, that is no kid burger. Yeah. That's not off the kiddie menu.
That ain't off the kids
not
menu.
At all.
Man, Stephen, go ahead.
I was going to say, I tell everybody on the trips, whenever we're eating lunch, I always say, this burger's for me. You know that, right?
Oh, man.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, man. Stephen, we've known each other for several years now, and we kind of I connected with this fly fishing community in Alabama and the Fly Tires Night that we did several years ago, pre-pandemic, and got to know you, and we've been on several fishing trips together. And Brad, I say this with all sincerity, Stephen is one of the most optimistic and kindest human beings on this planet. If you go fishing with him, he'll make you feel like you're the best fisherman out there. He would even brag about the size brim that I would catch. We were fishing for trout and we're fishing for bass. All I see is him just saying how awesome a fisherman I was for when I reel in those brim. So, man, we're so glad to have you here. Talk a lot about fly fishing, man. This has been a big part of your life. What is one of your first memories of fly fishing?
Right. So I haven't fly fished my entire life, but I've fished my entire life. My parents fly fished throughout my earlier years in my adolescence. And I never really picked up a fly rod, but that was always fun. We had a cabin on a creek called Yellow Creek, which is a tributary to the Black Warrior River, and we would always go out there. So watching them do that was probably one of my earliest memories, but my personal memories were within the last decade. And the reason why I started fly fishing was I had progressed conventional fishing throughout my entire life, and my friend Daniel, one of my best friends, decided, because we had talked about it for probably 4 or 5 years, so in our early 20s he was like, I'm buying him a fly rod and we're going to see what's going to happen. So he bought me a cheap Academy Martin rod or fly rod setup, and I took that out with me a year or so later on the kayak, and I was playing around with it and feeling what a brim felt like and a bass felt like kind of set this drive internally that I did not expect, because I'd already progressed from conventional fishing to, I guess, ultralight conventional fishing on creeks that I had been doing for close to maybe 7 or 8 years at the time. And then just adding the fly rod to it, another tool, just it was eye opening, and it was just fantastic. And I went out to this lake, and this is probably one of the best memories I have. I had gotten a very cheap vise from Bass Pro Shop, and it had this little kit in there with a DVD that told you how to tie flies. I don't need that, so I threw the DVD away. I got the vise, which could barely hold a hook, and I got a piece of I think it was a shoe. Took a shoe, and I cut a piece of foam out and stuck it on the hook. And I knew that there were some bass chasing shad in this lake, so I took feathers and just threw a whole bunch of feathers on the back of it. It's a terrible looking fly. 3 inches of feather, black piece of foam, just like a plug. And I went out there. It was 10 o'clock in the morning, and sure enough, the bass were chasing shad. I started casting out in these massive pods of bass just blowing up left and right. When I tell you, I couldn't cast but for 25, 30 feet to save my life. And I'm stripping that line as hard as I could, making that thing blow up on the water, all 2+ pounds. And it was incredible. So that was a defining moment. Granted, they were pond bass.
That'll spoil you.
It spoiled the snot out of me. It did. And that's probably one of my earliest memories, or one of my best memories, so to speak, when it comes to me.
Yeah, sure.
Oh yeah, it was impressive.
Man, it's kind of addictive whenever you get early success on anything. It's like, oh man, I want to get that again. I want to come back to that. I'm trying to set my son up to where he'll have some early successes, some early victories on the fly rod, and so far it's kind of got him hooked, to pun intended. So but yeah, man, that's great.
No, it's wonderful. And yeah, you said early success. Sometimes you're fortunate enough to experience that, and I have an addictive personality already, so if something's great, I just go. There's no slowing down.
That's funny. That's for the people that watch on the YouTube channel, we load these up on YouTube as well, and that they see my guitars behind me here, and so I play guitar for a really long time, and I teach guitar from time to time. Somebody go, man, I really want to learn how to play guitar. Do you do lessons? I'm like, sure. Do you really want to learn how to play? Is what I usually ask them, because if they don't really want to learn how to play, then they're probably not going to put the practice in, and that's going to waste my time, and I don't need a side hustle that bad.
Right.
But if they really want to learn, then I want to teach them, because it's fun to see somebody really take on guitar and go practice all the things that I show them. And so I do. So over the years, I've formulated the way that I do it, where I do that very thing. I give them some early wins, where like after like a couple lessons, they've got the melody to something, it's not just here's teaching them chords and teaching them like scales that you don't feel like, even though you're learning something very important that's a building block to your music, I eventually get there, but I want to give them something that goes, oh, I've already learned something, and they feel like, oh, I've made early progress. And so it sort of whets that appetite a little bit. And then we start working on some of those foundational things. But that early win is so important, especially when, like Brian, you talk about all the time with kids, how important kids want to go fishing. They don't want to go fishing. They want to go catching. And we've talked about that before. They don't have the attention span for fishing, but they want to go catching. And so if we can go catching, then that's really helpful to get them really wanting to do it.
Absolutely. That's all I want to do too.
Yeah,
don't we all? Yeah.
Stephen, you alluded to it just a little bit ago about your kayak, man. Weren't you at one point where your Instagram handle and your stick was not Fly Fishing Alabama? It was it Kayak Fly Fishing Alabama? Is that kind of what?
That's correct. That's correct. Yes, it was Kayak Fly Fishing Alabama. And at the time, I thought I was the one and only fly fisherman in the whole great state of Alabama. and I was And I was going on all these creeks and all
Surprise.
these, I know, surprise, I found out pretty fast. And right, I was going down all these creeks that I've been taking for years and kayaking them and canoeing them. And the next thing I knew, a couple other people on Instagram were following it. And one of my coworkers, named Will DeBell, and he's the one that can have credit for the Instagram. He goes, Steven, he goes, you go fishing every lunch break. You do all this stuff all the time. He goes, why don't you have an Instagram related to your fishing? People would just eat that up. And I was like, no, nobody wants to see that noise. It's me sweating in my waders on lunch break or running up and down a hill. He's like, man, you should try it. So I started the Instagram account, and then the next thing I knew, it peaked. It or hasn't peaked. It just blew up. And in my mind, it blew up. And it just has steadily grown every single year. And I've met some of, and you and Brad included, some of the best
Yeah.
people in the state of Alabama on this account. And it's remarkable how much it's opened up, not just for me, but the community. So I did change it. I had to be careful. I didn't want to step on anybody's toes or do anything like that. So with some careful navigating, I got fortunate enough about, I don't know if it was 4 or 5 years ago, I forget, maybe 4 years ago. I changed the name to Fly Fishing Alabama. I was able to secure the URL and everything like that.
Man,
And
that's nice.
oh man, it was awesome. Yeah.
Matt
And I
Lewis said that
decided that,
he's pretty bitter about that.
yeah, I heard about that the other day. Apparently, in his younger years, he had it for a little while, and but he'll be all right.
He's gonna be just fine.
He'll be
He
fine.
he's got red eye bass. He'll be just fine.
That's
Oh, I
right.
love it. That's funny.
But yeah. So anyway, so I did that, and I kind of just took off down that path, and it worked out really well for me. And then I did a guide season where I took several people out pre deciding to guide, or before I decided to guide, took lots of people out fishing, and all those trips were fairly successful. And then here we are 3 years later. So
That's so
it's
good.
really
Yeah, it's
cool.
been fun to watch that progression.
Thank you.
To see you go from like sort of hobbyist fun to now let's see if we can guide. And so it's cool. What was that initial like, I think I could guide. What was that moment like for you? What's maybe inspired that?
Right. So um I actually had a lot. I guess I started off, I love meeting people. I like talking to people, like getting to know people. I don't think you can ever make an assessment or an assumption about somebody before actually getting to know them. I think that's a fairly foolish thing. At least that's how I feel. And
Mm.
that's how I was raised. So I was meeting lots of people in the fly fishing community, and I kind of gave everybody a chance that wanted to go fishing. And then I realized very quickly that I was going on these trips every week or every other week with someone new,
Mm.
fishing, fishing, fishing. I was dedicating all this time and this energy into meeting people and getting to know people, and also just it felt like the fly fishing community here was growing and growing and growing as I got to know these people. So what kind of triggered the idea of guiding is there's another fly guide company here in East Alabama, and it's East Alabama Fly Fishing.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, well, if they're able to do it, I wonder if I could do it. And I wonder if just me taking people fishing, going fishing with people and meeting new friends would even warrant enough to start a business. So I actually called and spoke with Drew Morgan several times, and he gave me some excellent advice, and kind of we talked through everything together. And I was like, man, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. If I fail, I fail. If
Mm.
it succeeds, if it's successful, that's just going to be wonderful, and it will be icing on the cake. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I like to tend to lean on the side of, if it's easy and it works, then it works. If it's not easy, um, or if something doesn't seem to work out the way that it should, it's okay. Maybe it's not meant to be. Now, that's not to say that you don't try. But so
That's
yeah,
good.
and it worked out pretty well. And I booked up my entire spring within, I think, 6 days.
That's great.
Yeah, the first
That's
time.
great.
So it was remarkable.
So as you're starting this venture, this guiding service, obviously it evolves. The more you learn, the more you do it, it's going to evolve and you're going to grow. But early on, as you started it, what are some things that you hope your customers walk away with, from your trips?
I have structured everything that I do around giving a client an experience or a day that they'll never forget. I'm not just there to catch fish. I'm not just there to float a section of the river. I'm there to give someone a break from their everyday life, whether it's a stressful life or they do this all the time. My job, and this is the way that I see it, because when I go fishing, whether it be with friend or by myself, it's kind of like hitting a restart button or a refresh button. So, and I've taken all these tests and all these personality quizzes, et cetera, throughout my life. And every single one always seems to hit the same mark where my gift is serving others, period.
Yeah, this gift of
Serving others,
hospitality,
serving
man.
others, serving others. So I kind of said, well, if I want to have a good day on the water, this is what I would do. And I think that other people would enjoy it too. So and it's a little bit extra work, it's a little bit of extra time, it's a little bit of a lot of extra things. But bottom line is, you can't imagine going out on the water, catching some fish,
Hmm.
getting to sit down and eat a hot cooked meal, have a drink, conversation, and just relax and just soak up everything. So and it's really all about the experience, and in my mind, and I enjoy it just as much as I do with every client. I think it's just fun. It's always a different experience.
That's great.
What is that? Where does that come from? You know, your desire to serve and this giftedness of hospitality. Do you feel like that's connected to your faith? Do you feel like that's connected to your upbringing, your relationships that have influenced you? Where does that come from?
Right. So my mother always called me a big strong boy. And she always needed help. No, just kidding. No. She's my mother, that's my mother's personality. She's done that. We woke up with I think it was through that. My mother is probably one of the definitely one of the most spiritual role models in my life. And to break it down to make it simple, she's a prayer warrior. So, and she cares about everyone else's needs well before her own, which is at fault sometimes, to a fault. And man, I never woke up without the smell of breakfast. She'd come inside the house in the morning and, like she would stretch your arms and stretch your legs and squeeze your fingers and your feet and just tell you how wonderful you were. And she'd sing all of us a song before we got out of bed. And I'm not going to sing that song to you, but I do have it memorized and I do sing it to my children. Both my boys get that song in the morning and they get their arms and feet stretched. They're pampered over here. I'd say my mother, and she has a very much so a Christ-like personality, which has been an absolute catalyst for lots of decisions and lots of things in my life. So,
man, that's great. And, I think about, my mom and, always serving, always wanting to cook for people. And that's something that has rubbed off onto me also. It's just that facilitating community is something that I felt like she did a good job with, and it rubbed off on me. And I feel like that's something that I try to do also. And a lot of times it comes around food. So
you guys can cook too. I see what y'all do. I get jealous sometimes. I'm like, man, look at them. What are they doing over there? Posting pictures. Oh my gosh. Especially Brad. He has that fire pit.
Brad's got that brio. Those steaks you can smell it through the computer screen, man.
We had smellogram. We need smellogram, don't we?
We do. We need a smellogram.
I'm just drying off the keyboard from all this saliva. Oh man.
So have you always felt this this draw towards hospitality? Is it something that you that goes beyond just the fishing and your family? Is it something that's in your I guess is it just part of who you are? I mean, is that how you are at work? Is that how you are just everywhere?
It's definitely in my nature. Yeah. Which is weird saying that because now I feel like I'm talking about myself, but I guess what this is, it's what this is. But
it ain't bragging if it's true.
No. But I've always seem to fall on that. So
Well, your profession, physical therapy, is that?
physical
Am I
therapy.
remember that?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
you're
right.
literally doing that. You're
Yeah.
Yeah.
helping people
Yeah,
regain
I
their
enjoy it.
mobility.
Hmm.
So I mean, even your job is encompassing your gifting, which I think is cool. It makes going to your job a lot
Which
easier.
that's a shocker to most people who follow Stephen on Instagram, is that he has a job. It's
That's right. Yeah.
Hey, he worked. I didn't know he
wait, you
worked.
got wait, a physical therapist?
Yeah. But yeah, no, I've been working as a PTA in an outpatient orthopedic clinic for going on 8 years now, and I really,
Oh,
really
wow,
enjoy it. And it brings me a lot of satisfaction in my life and gratification helping others. But
that's great.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's just I'm fortunate that I found something that I enjoy, and I found kind of what makes me tick at a young age, and I've just kind of stuck to it, and it always seems to work as long as I'm kind of true to myself, I guess.
that's
Not to
good.
sound too hippy dippy.
Love it, man.
So, but I enjoy it quite a bit. And fishing is just second nature because I've done it my entire life. And oh man, there's nothing like it. Getting in a boat with someone you don't know. Never, I mean, you're the stress of, oh man, I want to give this guy the best day ever. And then you get on the boat, and I've been probably one of the most fortunate guides in the world, is how I feel, because everyone I take fishing just happens to be the next awesome person. It's just incredible. I've taken so many wonderful people, and I do my best, and I never want to disappoint. That's also a thing. I constantly reflect on that. But when they catch the fish, it's this relief of like pressure on me comes, okay, I'm good now. Now we can focus on the big ones. Now we can focus on lunch. And then it's just I stage everything in my head, and then but it's wonderful. I love it. I enjoy watching people catch fish and have a good day, probably more than I enjoy doing it at this point.
All right.
I do find, Brian. I think you would agree. Like the fly fishermen that we've run into, most fly fishermen are pretty good people, all
Yeah.
around. Like in my limited experience over the years, they're having fun. They're doing something hard and it's complicated, and they're willing to share and they're willing to learn. And man, it's a good community. I mean, the fly fishing in this state, it's a great community.
Yeah,
And
fantastic community.
and the more you run into, the more like, man, that's a good guy. Whoever, like guys like Wade Blevins. I mean, my goodness, I'm always better every time after I talk to Wade.
Talk about a
Man,
catalyst in my fly fishing life.
sure, yeah,
Probably the biggest influencer and catalyst that I've had to date was Wade.
that's
Wow.
good.
So yeah, I mean, just stepped in and he talk about somebody with a servant personality
Unquestionable.
to the
Yeah,
point and he's to a fault. He
Yeah.
he is a giver.
Yeah. He'll
indeed.
go, he's the definition of giving above and beyond. I mean,
Yeah.
Absolutely,
if you say,
without
"Hey,
a
wait,
shadow of
I
doubt.
sure would like to have one of those Sam's One bugs," he'll send you 5 Sam One bugs, and he sends you 4 or 5 paintings and some stickers and maybe a certificate for being a good friend or something like
Yeah,
that. I mean,
yeah, so true, man.
all right, so let's talk a little bit about your guide service. Okay, this is what the question. I've had some good guides and I've had some pretty terrible guides, and it had nothing to do with the fishing.
That's a we. That's a we.
That's a we.
I was there.
Yeah, Brad.
I was there.
He's had that. Brad had that same experience. What is the recipe for giving a client a great day on the water?
Um, in my mind, it starts well before you ever meet the individual, because you don't need to be short with the person. We're all people. And like I said, I'm trying to give an experience. And if I start off the wrong way, or if I'm negative in the beginning, it's only going to create this shadow that then blooms over the entire thing. But meeting or talking to the person initially, making sure that you good follow up, good contact with them. You don't leave them in the dark. You try to, even if you're having to wait on dates or something like that, because my scheduling is a little bit different than everyone else's, because I work around my wife's
Because
schedule and
you
my
do have a
full-time
job
job.
too.
That's correct. I do.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
And 2 children.
Yeah. And
That's
two
right.
children. Oh man, the best boys. So it all starts with communication. Everybody that reaches out to me is just important as everybody in my
Mhm.
mind. So that follow-up communication with them. After that, establishing a day that works for the both of you. And then when you get on the boat ramp, just talk to them and explain kind of how you want the day to go and let them know that it's just going to be a good day. And something I like to tell everybody is, I don't know if I've told you today, but you look good today. So I like to start it off like that. And yeah, I think every client, it's a little bit different with every client. So the recipe is variable, but I think listening,
Mhm.
um, just letting people know that they are valuable, not monetarily, but just as a person, getting to experience memories with them on the water and teach them something new. I like to ask every client what their weaknesses are, at least what they think their weaknesses are. And if I can add value to them, I will. I'll do everything I can to focus on those key elements throughout the day on the water. And then, of course, a burger.
Well,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, and that, like Brad said in the intro, man, that burger can cover a multitude of missed fish. Um,
You know what the secret ingredient is, right?
tell me.
Candied jalapenos.
Oh,
Candied,
stop it.
And
candied
that and
jalapenos.
that's from y'all know Paul Terry.
Yeah.
We were on a smallmouth fishing trip a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I forget. And I was cooking the burger like I always did, and he showed up, and I'm melting Baby Bell cheese on it,
Mm. Mm.
garlic and salt and pepper, and I'm doing all this stuff, and he pulls out this can or this jar from Bucky's, and it says candied jalapenos, and I said, "Man, what in the world is that?" And he said, "You got to try it. This is the trick." And I put it on that burger, and I've never looked back. I take trips to Bucky's like 2 or 3 times a year and just buy cans of that stuff.
Brad,
It's
you're gonna have to finish
amazing.
this episode because I'm about to head over to Bucky's.
I'm telling you, it's a game changer. Oh
I'm gonna have
man.
to
And then,
try it. I'm gonna have to
oh
try it.
my
We
gosh.
got one here close.
Oh
We'll
yeah,
have to.
remarkable.
That's great.
Man, and when we joke about it, but if you're sitting there and you're able to look forward to a good home cooked, well, not home cooked, shore cooked, hot meal that fill your belly and make you redeem a little bit of bad luck if you ever have it. You probably don't have bad luck on your trips because of how good of a guide you are, but that would make a good a good substitute for some rough day on the water, having that nice meal there,
Oh
man.
man. We all have rough days on the water, but the
Yeah, I mean
burger
that.
it comes in at the right time every
It
single time.
Yeah, you
hits the
can't.
right spot.
It does.
You can't control. What the fish are doing, right?
No, not
You
at all.
sure control that burger, though, boy.
That's right.
I tell you,
Oh,
I'm a big proponent for like an atmosphere also adds to the taste.
Right.
That burger, anywhere else might not be quite as good as it is
On the water.
on the water. And you hear
That's
that
right.
sound and that no, there's maybe some mist in the air that adds to flavor, of course.
That's right. Yeah.
And I mean all of those ingredients, not just the actual food ingredients, all those add to an atmosphere that adds to the flavor of whatever it is you're eating. It makes better. It does make it better. So man, I love that. That's incredible. And that's a great that's reason enough to go fishing with you, in my opinion.
when we do a Storied Outdoors cookbook, we're gonna have Stephen Rockarts Shore Burger on there.
I
That
would be
is
honored.
excellent idea. Excellent idea.
I'll send you a PDF over tonight after the
There we
show.
go. Well,
Nice.
that's just
Yeah.
great. That's
No,
great. Man,
when I first started, I'm sorry for interrupting you. When I first started, I tried to provide even more of an experience, and I made homemade bacon, egg, and cheese biscuits the night
I remember seeing
before.
that.
Yeah, the night before every trip, I would go bake all these biscuits, make everything, wrap it in foil, put it in the refrigerator, and then preheat them in the oven for 30 minutes in the morning time. Wrap them in an insulated bag and bring them so you could eat breakfast on the
Oh,
creek. And the only reason why that expired is it was so much time
A lot of
and
work.
additional effort. And then most of the time everybody just wanted to fish. Or they had already eaten something,
Mhm.
just coffee is all they have. I'm like, well, So I stopped doing that, but
Mm.
man, I just like cooking, and
there's usually a Jack's pretty close by, somewhere.
there is, if somebody wants a biscuit from there, man, they can go grab one.
Quality biscuit.
That's right.
I'm interested to ask this. Now that you've guided for a little while, how have these trips changed your personal recreational time on the water? I mean, can you, like, as a musician, whenever I go to a concert or something, or whenever I go to another church, especially another church, because I was a worship leader for 20 years, it's really hard for me to turn that off whenever I'm watching somebody else, or when it's hard to not think about, oh, this would be good whenever I'm doing this or whenever I'm doing that. And so are you able to turn that off as a recreational fisherman, or is that just part of what comes with guiding, is you're always thinking, oh man, I should do that on my next trip or whatever?
So I can turn it off at times, but the majority of the time, I feel like I'm just learning. No matter what, you're always going to learn.
Sure.
No matter what you're doing. If you're not learning, you're not growing. So whenever I'm fishing by myself, I can turn it off temporarily, and I'll pick certain waters apart and things like that. But if I'm ever that the problem is that if I'm fishing with a friend, there is no such thing as turning it off. So I mean, we'll separate a little bit. Sometimes we're wading certain areas together, or we'll switch places in the boat. But I'm always thinking about how either I would do things differently, or how I should do things exactly the same way that they did something in the future. And then making mental notes and other notes in your phone as to weather, turbidity, oxygenation in the water for dissolved oxygen, just every little bitty factor. And I've got it down. I hope I don't jinx myself. I've got it down now where I've been able to be on the water 3 days within the last year where everything looked perfect on all my charts in the USGS, and they all happen to be just phenomenal days. So I'm fingers crossed next year, this year coming up, that I guess science of it continues, but fish are unpredictable. But
Yeah. So
I like to
so
think that I'm
you're
figuring
are
it
you
out.
keeping like a digital journal or an actual journal when it comes to that?
So I used to keep a paper journal and I'd write everything down.
Mm,
And then I
I
started
love that.
keeping a digital journal. And then what I've learned is that all of that, all of that is almost a waste of time now. And I'll tell you why. If you take pictures, if you take videos of your surroundings and you take pictures of the morning time, the evening time, whatever, all you have to do is go on your computer, USGS, select that date, select your weather, select that date, look at your picture, and it tells you everything perfectly in a chronological order.
Ah,
The temperature for the time of the day, the pressure, everything. Puts it all right there in front of you. And it takes probably 30 or 45 seconds. So I have everything on my phone saved. I have a tab for everything. So all I do is if I want to compare it to something, I've got fishing folder, guide folders, what fish folders, what days, etc. And then I just go through and then I check everything off that way.
that's really cool. I love that
So
attention to
Google's
that kind
great.
of, yeah, that detail is great, man. That's awesome.
But I really, really enjoy it.
I can tell you do. I think about, you know, we've had a lot of conversations on the water, and the way that you run your business is very, very, I feel like a reflection of your faith and how you put others first, and you're the servant leader. How does that look? What does that look like? How does your faith affect how you run your business?
I think it affects it a lot. And it all boils down to I guess treating people how you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how you look at it, but also being a good example. And now that's not saying that I don't say things that I shouldn't say or tell jokes I shouldn't tell. But ultimately, I think the way that you treat people is probably the biggest reflection on not just you, but how Christ would be. So,
Mm,
he's not judging anyone, and he's not condemning anyone, and he's not, um, that's not his objective. His objective is to love you and to try to understand your perspective and let you know that he's there for you and show you grace and whatnot. So I feel like that the four-letter word kind is just the best thing to be. Just
Mm-hmm.
be kind.
Yeah, and I was talking to some guys the other day about that the difference between kind and nice. There's a big difference there.
There's a significant difference.
Kindness,
Kind is better.
yeah,
Gosh,
kind,
that was too
kind,
nice of me, wasn't it?
yeah,
Mhm.
kind and niceness. You think there's this almost like this inauthentic uh view whenever you're being nice, but when you're being kind,
You know what I think about when you say he's nice? I think about like that sort of Southern lady. Oh, bless his heart.
bless his heart. That's the same.
That's being nice.
That's
That
being
ain't being
nice.
Yep,
kind.
No,
exactly.
kind is like actually feeling, showing love towards that person and showing an actual genuine care for that person. And, niceness is like appeasing someone because you just want to get out of the room, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I've
so,
been there.
absolutely.
I've
Yeah,
been there, by the way. So,
yeah.
yeah, I think we all have. But yeah, I think I would definitely agree with that, man. And it
Mm,
shows, if our faith doesn't affect how we treat other people, then it's a very shallow faith. Um,
yeah,
and so
agreed.
the way that you treat people is very much indicative of how you see Jesus and how he. I don't know. I feel like I feel like that's important. And good job.
well, thank you. No, he's had a significant influence on my life, and you know, every time I've gone through a season or whatever it is, I've always seemed to be, I guess, given a grace that's not warranted or not
Mm,
deserved. And
mm,
it's been, and those are stories for another day, but it boils down to me meeting my wife, me having a child that's healthy, me having career changes at the appropriate times, like almost every single decision that I've ever made since giving my life to Christ. So,
Undeserved.
and
Yeah, man. That's just
yeah,
grace. That's a good way to look at it.
yeah,
absolutely.
so
So,
good. What I know fishermen can be, very protective of their spots, and I get
right,
it.
right.
I get it. I totally get it. Because you
hmm
are trying to run a business. But what, for those that are listening that maybe aren't from Alabama, perhaps, and a lot that are, without giving too much away, what do you consider sort of your home waters as a guide, or
Right.
your sort of your region?
Right. So predominantly is the Cahaba River, and mostly because it's absolutely breathtaking. Several runs are probably some of the beautiful areas you'll ever be in Alabama, in my opinion. There's a wide diversity of fish and different fish species, aquatic species. There, the water is ever changing because essentially there are some areas that are kind of dammed up or spillway, but theoretically speaking, it's over 100 miles of undammed water.
Really, 100
Um,
miles. I didn't realize it was that long.
I believe it's 140 something miles. I should know exactly, but I don't. But it's significant waterway. Every single section of that water, I guide 4 sections on it, fish completely differently. They all fish differently from the time of the year. The first run I started guiding, I think I fished it personally, the 7 mile run over 100 times prior to guiding. And now I fished it over 150 times. And I don't fish it as much anymore because with the raft and everything like that, it's not as easily navigable. So I fish a lot of lower sections and things like that in the Cahaba River that are easily, or well, much easier to raft on and much more friendly for the client. So they're not having to worry about going out, getting out through shoals. And then I fish other waterways like the Locust Fork, and then in the years to come, hopefully I'll branch out to a few others. So
That's cool. However, that transition from you did the canoe for a good while,
correct,
and
correct.
then you
Yes, I
transitioned over to the raft. How's that been for you?
so there was obviously a learning curve. I did not anticipate the mechanics of it completely reversing. So with a canoe, you're propelling yourself forward, you're paddling and everything like this. And the way that you push the paddle and the way you maneuver the paddle affects the boat and it feels more natural. But once you get into the raft, you've got this bubble that just sits on top of the water. The wind blows, you go this way. The wind blows, you go this way. And you can turn it effortlessly. And going through shoals and things like that, let's say the water comes down in a hard left, river left, and then it bends right. Well, your raft's just gonna keep on going straight. It's never gonna, it's never gonna ever keel with the water properly. So you have to navigate it correctly and all that. And I got a lot of very good tips from a guy named Roel Guevara, and then also a guy named Murph, who also guides over there and runs on the Tallapoosa a lot with East Alabama. And they gave me a lot of pointers prior to me getting my raft, and they actually let me row their rafts, and they
cool.
showed me what to do and how to navigate the waters, which I didn't realize how much of a wealth of knowledge that was at the time until I got on the water with my raft, and then found myself in those situations. I said, okay, I'm just going to do what they told me, and it panned out beautifully. And but it was a significant learning curve.
I hope we were able to get Roel on the podcast eventually. Like he's definitely been on our list of guys that we'd love to hear his story.
Fantastic guy, absolutely fantastic guy. But I've really enjoyed the raft and the capabilities of having two clients in the boat versus one. Granted, one's just fine too. I just have more room for gear, but it doesn't really matter that much. It's also nice when you have a couple buddies on the boat, because I like to josh around a little bit. And if you got two guys up there, dude, you're at the mercy of them. Like whatever they want to throw at you, you have to be willing to take it. So that works out pretty well. So, but that's fun.
That's awesome, man. So, we like to refer to this podcast as a digital campfire. If we're sitting around a campfire, telling stories, swapping stories, what's one of your favorite stories to tell? What's one of your go-to stories? It could be one of your best fish. It could be an adventure. It could be a near-death experience. What kind
Close
of
calls?
Yeah.
No. So I have a lot of stories. And some are good and some are bad, but one of my go-to stories, and we'll make it a fishing story, is just some of the days that I've had on the Cahaba River. And one in particular was a recent one, and the day just kind of stands out to me for a number of reasons. And it was one with Stephen Cook, who's the owner of Calico Fly Rods. And
Excellent rods, by the way.
yeah, fantastic. That is fantastic, and just a all around wonderful person, just a great person. The more I get to know him, just the better he is. And he never really shies away from going on a trip on the water, and he's always like, "Yeah, let's just go, let's do it." And that's the same way I am, because and I tell clients all the time, you don't know until you go. And I've had so many trips where everything looked like it wasn't going to work out weather-wise, and then we go and we catch more fish than you could possibly imagine. It had the most fun you could have on the water in one day. And so Stephen Cook and I went out, and my wife called me 30 minutes after I left the house. So I was like maybe 4:20 something in the morning. She called me, "Honey, what are you doing right now? You need to come home right now. The house is shaking. There's a storm hitting the house." I look at the radar, and Brian, I mean, do you remember the day where we were on the water and we got caught in that storm and it was unreal?
I remember sitting underneath that
vaguely,
waiting
Thinking
on
that you're about to die?
Yeah, and because lightning was striking everywhere, you had
3 seconds apart.
You had taken out a full out sprint to go get the truck, and all I see is you coming in on two wheels, and you said load it all up, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, I think it's time to go, because like lightning, bam, 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 bam.
3 seconds.
Nuts.
For 5 minutes every 3 seconds. I was counting it. I've never experienced weather like that in my life. It was insane.
Yeah.
So that's what my wife was experiencing.
Yeah. Okay. I got a visual now. At least she was in a house, not underneath an Eno
tarp.
Right. That wasn't going to stop very much.
The rain fly wasn't doing jack.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Well, maybe I should just resort back to that trip. But you and I did the same thing. We threaded the storm. Remember doing that, Brian?
Yep.
We watched the radar, and unfortunately we got hit by the tail of it. So my wife's at home and she's calling me, "Hey, the house is shaking. The kids are up. You need to come home. We're in trouble." I was like, "What are you talking about? It's a dry as a bone right here." I looked at the radar before I left, and I pull it back up, and there's this one little speck just smoking the house and the whole part of town.
Just bright red, like somebody hit it with a marker.
It was purple.
Oh, purple. Oh my gosh.
I was freaking out. I said, "Oh my God." I said, "You need to like get in the bathtub. You're probably in one of those polygons."
Yeah, you got to
So
respect the polygon.
yeah. Well,
Gotta
I
respect it.
looked at the projections of the storm and the way everything was working. It looked like at this point a lot of the state was going to get smoked. And I called Steve and I was like, "Hey man, you still want to do it?" He's like, "I'm in the car," and I was like, "I'm in the car too. I'll see you there." Called my wife back. I said, "Well, I shouldn't turn around right now because I shouldn't drive into the storm,
I know
and it
that's
looks
going to
like
be a
I'm
little
going to
bit
be
more
fine."
dangerous.
So she told me what she thought, and
I'm gonna miss her.
excuse me, you got me.
Oh
Yeah,
god.
that's what happened, and I kept on trucking, and I drove an hour and a half away, and I got there with Stephen Cook, and I said, "All right, man, looks like we got till about 10 o'clock, and then we're toast unless I read this right, and then maybe we'll be fortunate." And he was just like, "Man, we'll see how it goes." Works for me. So we get on the water, and we've got all of our rain gear. I finally checked in my wife. She's like, "We're okay now, but the power's out." Like all this terrible stuff. I was like, "Man, that stinks for you, babes. I'm on the water. I'm having a great time. The sun is shining. I'm
The
2 hours
sun is
away."
shining, the birds are singing.
Exactly.
Hey, as a
I'm an
matter of
hour
fact,
and
we
a
don't have power out here either.
half. I don't think relating would have helped me in that
No,
situation.
No.
you just digging a deeper hole.
So so we just kept fishing, and we got on the water, and we're like, "Well, might as well ride it out." My wife told me what she thought, and we caught so many fish, and we were watching the storm, and he would catch a fish, then I would catch a fish, then we'd swap up again. He would catch two or three fish, then I'd catch two or three fish, then he'd catch a huge fish, then I caught a huge fish, and it was just back and forth the whole day. We get around to be around noon, and we're like, why is the sun still shining? Why are we okay? And we look at the radar, and here we are in this perfect channel. Storms below us, storms above us. Never got touched on this 5 mile section of river. Not once. Sun
Wow.
shining, beautiful blue skies the entire day. I got home, power got turned back on shortly before I got home. Told my wife how much of a wonderful day I had. Showed her the pictures, which she didn't care to see. And
That's good,
and
honey. You're sleeping on the couch.
and
Well,
foolish
you
me
can
asked her
sleep
how
in
her
that
day was.
raft tonight, big boy.
I asked her how her day was, and that was the end. So, how was your day? As I tucked myself into the raft. So
We laugh, but
yeah,
and that's great. I love that. What a great experience
yeah.
and story. But
One of
like,
my favorite ones recently.
yeah, what a great memory. Um, times like that, we can look back on them and part of the sort of the ethos of what we're trying to do. It's in our tagline. Things that shape us. These experiences shape us. What about that, or perhaps your time on the water, which is extensive? What have there been some lessons that you learned that shaped you as a man, or shaped you as a guide,
So
or a father, whatever?
Mm-hmm.
just about everything. So time on the water has taught me a lot, and when I'm by myself, I always have these weird moments of reflection, not just self-reflection, but you go through thoughts, you go through encounters with other people, whether they're good encounters or they're bad encounters. You go through situations in your life, whether it be like your regular work life, your family life, your life as a father, whatever it is, you seem to, at least this is the way that I function, and I don't know if it's the way that everyone else does, but when I go out and I fish by myself, I'm absolutely away from everything, but at the exact same time, I'm consumed with everything more than I ever have been. But for some reason, I get this peace about situations, and I talk to God, and I pray, and I usually always take a moment to just ask, what I should do.
Mm.
And I get this, I don't know how else to say it, kind of like a divine understanding or resolve with whatever that is. And it's helped me learn patience. It's helped me reflect on issues that or things that I do as a father that I shouldn't do. And it helps me also think about how fortunate I am. And this is so silly because you wouldn't think like this, but me being able to do those things makes me think about how fortunate I am to have a wife and to have children and to have a spouse that, for lack of a better term, lets me go fishing as much as I do. And it almost, I mean, it makes me appreciate my family more, my friends more, and even just my relationship and walk with God, because if either one of those things weren't there, I don't know how they would. I just don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
how anything would work.
I think
So
doesn't the pace of fishing allow for those thoughts and those reflections, right?
absolutely,
Especially on a raft or on a canoe. You're not, you're in a bass tournament on a $40,000 Triton with 300 on the back of it. You're like, what did you say, Brian? Your hair's on fire. You're just going to wherever, just blowing, just going so fast, and those guys are ripping to the next hole. But
that's right.
within fly fishing, you're sort of, it's something I've been ruminating on is, on a drift, you're sort of at the mercy of the river and the pace of the river. And it offers that pace of life to be able to do that,
Absolutely.
And so,
It's amazing. There's nothing like it.
nothing like it. I mean, I think about, we laugh when that was a great story, but I mean, I think about how many times I look back into, say, COVID, for instance, and we're all locked down and we're at our homes, and, it's very difficult, incredibly difficult, much more difficult for others, and I felt like, there were times when I felt like I was in that little vein between storms. There were people around us that, all hell was breaking loose for their families or their marriages.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
But here we are, we're locked down. I love my wife. I even like to be around her, and it got even better during COVID. I mean, we were locked down, but man, we were like, man, can we stay locked down? I mean, we're building a garden, we're sharing life together, we're doing all these things together, and all around us, it's like, there are times in life when it's like that, and those experiences make me think about that. When we look back, and the sun was shining. You never know till you go, right?
That's right.
Well, we'll
Man.
find out. And that's what
Yep.
we did, and here we were. I think our marriage was strengthened, and I had time with my kids that that was a super special memory, and so our perspective changes when we spend a lot of time outside. When we spend time on the water, our perspective has changed.
Stephen, something you said reminded me of, there's an old song. It's like, I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. But it comes from Isaiah. It says, I will extend peace to her like a river. And there's something about that, man, being in that water and just being able to just kind of let the weight of the world fall off of you into that stream and just go downstream, never to be seen again, man. There's something healing about water, I feel like.
No question.
Absolutely. It doesn't take very long either. You just have to just sit there in silence or stand there in silence and close your eyes and just stop everything that you're doing for at least 10 or 15 seconds, and then it's done.
I think in there, like, I'm pretty sure I've seen a TikTok audio that's like, your body needs to see water, and they
15 minutes a day or something like that.
Something like that. Like,
Yeah.
well, they're not wrong. They're not wrong. I'm just gonna say,
Honey.
honey.
All right, Stephen, this is something new. We're testing out on you. Okay.
I love being it. I love being a test dummy.
You're our test subject here.
Okay.
Rapid fire questions. It's going to be 15 questions. All right. And it's a this or that type of thing, or it's a your favorite or your biggest fish, that type of thing. So
I wish this was like sponsored so I could do this, like, and this This spot sponsored by Calico Rods, or something like
Hey,
that.
we are open for sponsorships. If you like this segment, this is going to be for you.
That's right.
We are taking
This or
taking
that.
bids. Okay.
Sponsored by Fly Fishing Alabama.
Sponsored by Fly Fishing
Boom.
Alabama, Shoreburger, and Big Bass. All right,
And
so here we go.
Storms.
Are you ready?
I hope so.
Okay, top water or streamer,
Top water.
trout or bass,
Bass.
red eye bass or Alabama bass,
Ooh.
Alabama bass.
IPA or lager,
Lager. All day.
kayak or raft.
Shoot.
I know I was gonna get you on this one.
Dude, if it's solo, kayak all day. If it's you and a buddy, raft.
Okay, books or movies.
Neither.
I
I don't like reading books and I don't like watching movies.
Okay, all right, tent or cabin.
Oh, tent.
Tent. Favorite thing to do with your kids.
We play punch every night.
Punch.
Play punch.
We wrestle.
I love it.
Theo calls it punch. We
I
wrestle.
love it.
We wrestled for 30 minutes before I got on this podcast. And I can tell you, I gave up like 15 times just to get sucker tackled again.
I
hadn't had
absolutely
enough.
love that. All right, ocean
Yeah.
or river,
River.
bacon or sausage.
Bacon. Ooh, but sausage is good too.
That's
Bacon.
tough.
Pork.
That's tough. Pork.
Pork.
Okay, yes, that's the answer. Yes.
Yes.
All right, biggest bass.
Biggest bass on the fly rod. Probably it's about 4.25 pounds. It was an Alabama bass and it was amazing.
Gosh, that's huge.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Biggest trout.
Trout, I think it was like 6 or 7 pounds, and it was year before last.
Nice. Favorite place to fish.
The water.
The water. Favorite
Well
place
played,
to catch
sir.
a fish. In the mouth.
In the
In the
mouth.
mouth. Hey, you know where you can't catch them, right? In the trees.
I've
we're-
learned that one.
Or at the house.
That's true.
Oh yeah, can't catch
All
them
right,
at the house.
favorite fly to tie.
That actually is going to be no matter what, probably for the rest of my life, the Sam's one bug.
There we
And
go.
and I have good reason for that. I have great reason for that. But Wade taught it to me. Love Wade. It's a very simple, easy tie. You can drift it, you can pop it, you can dive it. You can do anything you want to with it. You can tie it in a small size. You can tie it in like a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch size. So in other words, it can be a large popper or a small, like natural presentation. And
Hopper
you can tie
dropper.
those. Yeah, you can tie those suckers in 6 minutes,
Wow.
Wow.
and they never tear up. So that's
No.
my favorite one. So the tie, yeah.
And then the last question is, what's your next adventure?
My next adventure. I have a trip planned end of March with a group of friends, and we've been doing this every year for several years now. And we go up to Bryson. Nothing, but everything at the same time.
All right. Yeah, I'm gonna have to, Brad, you're gonna have to edit from this point right here. I didn't hear anything. You said something about Bryson City.
I didn't lose any of his audio.
Okay, but I'm not. I'm recording on mine though. I wonder if it's.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, I'll
Okay.
give it a
Hey, I
listen.
lost both of y'all there.
All right. Can you say that again? Can you say where your next adventure is?
Yeah. Next adventure is going to be towards the end of March in Bryson City, North Carolina. There's a group of friends, and we all go out there. We've been doing it for several years now, and we go out for 3 days, and we go fishing. We hike up and fish the Nantahala, and we'll go trout fishing, and we go and eat in downtown Bryson. One of the favorite things to do is we always eat this Italian restaurant in downtown Bryson, and we eat at a breakfast joint there too. And we were
Wow.
gifted this information about all these little ins and outs by a guy named Earl Brinkley, who's an Alabama native, who is
He
just
sounds
probably
very trustworthy.
one of the best guys you'll ever meet. I'm telling you, wealth of knowledge. And and he gave us this gym years ago, and man, just we followed his recipe almost to a T, and it
That's
has
great.
it's become our own tradition.
Oh, that
So
sounds fantastic, man. Good
it's
luck.
wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, this is great. So I like the
How
rapid fire too.
yeah, that was good. That's good. That was a good
We'll do
list,
that
Brian.
again.
We'll do it again. That's fun. How what's the best way, Stephen, for people to find you and to follow your stuff?
Right. So Instagram is the easiest way to contact me, which is fly fishing or at fly fishing Alabama, and no spaces or anything like that, just one straight
Yeah.
word. And then you can also reach out to me on Facebook, which is Fly Fishing Alabama LLC, or you can reach out via the web, which is www.flyfishingalabama.com. And I don't know who's going to answer. It could be me. It could be Matt Lewis, but we'll find out.
Nice. That's great.
But no, I will respond to the online messages, and I have my phone number up there too online, and you can always just text me. That's probably the quickest way to get a response, or through
Yeah.
Instagram.
And
Instagram works as well.
Matt will probably send you a hybrid response.
I catch a lot of it's my favorite fish to
Oh,
catch. I
man.
should have said that earlier.
This season is going to feature a lot of people from this Alabama community, and so we're so excited.
That's wonderful.
So excited to add you to that community and to lend your voice to that community and expose our folks to all the fine people of not just your fly fishing Alabama, but the fly fishermen in Alabama, because I think part of the gift of where we live is we live in an amazing place to go fly fishing, and it's an underrated place to go fly fishing. And so as we highlight all these different folks all over the state, like Mary Beth Meeks and Matt Lewis and Brandon Bales and you, man, there's a wealth of places and wonderful experiences to be had here in this state. And so it's fun for us to be able to highlight that to, we don't have a ton of listeners, but that list is growing, but they're all over the place. And this season will give them the opportunity to hear, man, maybe I should go down and take a little vacation down to Birmingham and catch up with Stephen and go fishing, and
right.
And you will not be disappointed if you want to go catch a fishing around Birmingham.
That's right.
Give Stephen a call. You will not be disappointed.
It'll be beautiful, and I think I sort of want to be careful because too many people find out, people be moving here.
Wow, man, we have some beautiful, wonderful water here. We
Absolutely.
really do. It's remarkable
From top to bottom.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The entire state, you can just about have any target, any species, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. But man, thank you so much for joining us, man, and sharing your stories and sharing your life and your work with us, brother.
Well, thank y'all so much for having me. It means the world to me. I really, really am appreciative of this. If anything, it was nice to sit down and talk to both of y'all for a little while and catch up. And yeah, the only thing we're missing is the campfire. I almost drew a picture with a Sharpie marker and taped it on the wall, but I didn't have time, so I left that out.
We need to have a fourth screen here that's
just with those YouTubes of campfire going.
Yeah. just constantly going.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, man, this has been just a fantastic conversation, and I love the dream and realizing the dream of becoming a guide and watching you do that, and that's so inspiring. And maybe it'll inspire some others to do that kind of thing. To look, maybe they have a dream that's different, and maybe it turns into something, and they take your mentality on, which I think is good. If it's easy or if it's difficult, like letting that gauge, and you learn from that, and it's certainly something that's enjoyable. And man, what a treasure to have something that you love to do become the thing that you do more of. And so it's fun to watch that and an inspiration. We, excuse me. We're so thankful for so many people that do listen, and it is growing, and we are so thankful for all the people that listen. the messages that we receive and the encouragements that we've gotten over just really the past couple months. It seems like, man, we just hit this spurt of listeners and messages and things that are going on in people's lives and how they've been encouraged by these stories and our conversations as we're just doing our very best to interject some goodness into the world. And man, we've heard how that's been working, and it's actually been happening. So man, we're overjoyed to be able to do this, and thankful for all those that listen and support. If you want to help, if you want to partner with us and help, the best way to do that is to leave us a written review on iTunes, or at least a rating on iTunes or Spotify. You know, a lot of people are Spotify listeners, or we're on all kinds of podcast platforms. And even if you use Audible, you can find us in Audible now. And obviously, it doesn't require a credit; it's free. But you can find us in Audible if you use Audible. But all of those have a way where you can rate the podcast. Those ratings, and especially the written ones, man, they help us so much. Help other people to find this podcast. So it's a big way to support what we're doing. If you want to see more and connect more with Stephen, obviously you can find him on flyfishingalabama.com, but you can also, we'll have a dedicated page for this episode on thestoriedoutdoors.com, which will have all the links and all the ways that you can find Stephen, and pictures and things that he's going to share with us about his trips and other blog posts and all kinds of additional content that has to do with the Storied Outdoors. So the storiedoutdoors.com. And if you have comments or questions, or maybe a guest recommendation, thestoriedoutdoors@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much, man, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for listening and supporting this conversation, this digital campfire where we get to build community and have conversations with people like Stephen. We hope these conversations encourage, challenge you to write down your own stories, to share your own adventures in the place that we love to call the Storied Outdoors.